Before diving into the video, did you know that over 80% of you watching right now aren't subscribed? Your one like and one subscribe means the absolute world to this channel and helps us keep going. Hit those buttons real quick, and let's get into the video. Chapter 1 in the eyes of outsiders. Ethan had been pursuing Sarah for 3 long years without success. But only the two of them knew the truth. They had been in a secret relationship for those 3 years. At a party, people asked Ethan if he still couldn't win Sarah over, teasingly asking if he was planning to stay single for life. Even Sarah herself chuckled and said, "I know a lot of people. How about I introduce you to a hot girl to have some fun with?" In his previous life, on this very day, Ethan couldn't hold back his anger and publicly revealed their relationship. The transfer student, Julian, had walked out without saying a word. Sarah didn't say anything to his face at the time, but in private, she grew colder and colder toward him. Even after they got married, Ethan worked tirelessly for her career. Yet, when he got into a horrific car accident and was pushed into the operating room, she was in the Maldives with Julian unwinding. When he was sent to the crematorium, she was in a Michelin-starred restaurant celebrating Julian's birthday. It was then that Ethan finally understood she had never loved him at all. Now, given a second chance at life, Ethan just smiled and said, "No need, I'm already engaged." The room fell silent. Almost instinctively, everyone turned to look at Sarah lounging on the sofa. Her sultry figure stiffened for a second before she let out a derisive laugh. "Perfect. Saves me from having you trailing after me every day, annoying me to death." Ethan gave a faint smile, but didn't reply. The atmosphere turned awkward. The friend who had organized the gathering quickly tried to liven things up, shouting, "Come on, let's keep the game going." This round's Sarah's turn. The task is, pick a guy here and kiss him for 30 seconds. It was supposed to be a playful, teasing party game, but the room went quiet again because there were only 2 men present, Ethan and the transfer student, Julian. Everyone knew that from the very first day Julian transferred here, he and Ethan hadn't gotten along. The leading friend gave an awkward chuckle. "Sarah, maybe just have a drink instead?" "No need," Sarah said. She set down her wine glass without the slightest hesitation, turned, grabbed Julian by the collar with one hand, and kissed him. Julian's eyes widened slightly, but in the next moment, he cupped the back of her head and took control. When the kiss ended, Sarah sank back into the sofa, her gaze fixed tightly on Ethan. "It's just a game. It's not like I can't afford to lose." Laughter erupted around them, with people chiming in. The friend beside Ethan gave him a sympathetic look. Ethan was just about to say something when the phone in his pocket buzzed. It was a text message. "Did you get home yet?" Seeing that, Ethan stood up from the sofa and addressed the group. "I've got something to take care of, so I'll head out first." Without wasting another second, he left the private room. Chapter 2. Ethan had been reborn a month ago. The very first thing he did after coming back was break up with Sarah and accept his family's arrangement to get engaged to Valerie Montgomery, the famously talented young lady of City A. In his previous life, his family had also arranged for him to be engaged to her, but back then he had been utterly obsessed with Sarah and flat-out refused. Yet, when he died on the operating table, Sarah was traveling the world with Julian, and it was Valerie who collected his body in the end. Ethan lowered his head and replied to Valerie's message. "Not yet. I'm about to head back now. In a few days, it will be Grandpa Montgomery's birthday." Tonight, Valerie and Ethan had arranged a video call to pick out a gift for him together. A few more vibrations came from his phone. Looking down, he saw they were from Sarah. "What's wrong? Can't stand being away already? Weren't you acting all bold just now? Lying about being engaged just to get under my skin?" Ethan's gaze shifted to the message above those, the breakup text he had sent her a month ago, which she had never replied to. He narrowed his eyes slightly, ignored her completely, and didn't respond, slipping his phone back into his pocket. On the roadside, a black Maybach was parked. A message from Valerie popped up. "It's not safe to go back alone at night, so I got you a car. Sorry, there's something going on here in City A, so I can't come pick you up myself." Ethan smiled faintly and replied, "It's fine. You go ahead and take care of your work." Chapter 3. The Montgomery family held immense power, so Grandpa Montgomery's birthday would naturally be a grand event. Valerie Montgomery had already prepared a gift on Ethan's behalf, But to show his sincerity, Ethan still wanted to pick one out personally. The moment the video call connected, a beautiful face appeared on the screen. She was wearing a black dress, her fair skin and delicate features striking. Valerie's voice didn't quite match her appearance. She looked like someone with a strong air of aloofness, yet her voice was soft and gentle. Ethan showed her the gifts he had selected based on Grandpa Montgomery's preferences one by one, and she was incredibly patient with each. Before they knew it, they had been talking for over an hour. When the conversation was about to end, she said, "Ethan, I'll have someone come pick you up this weekend." Ethan nodded and responded, "All right." After hanging up, he went to wash up. When he returned to bed and picked up his phone, he saw a message from the friend who threw the party. "Ethan, are you okay? The reason I set up today's gathering was to try and match you with Sarah, but I didn't expect." Ethan sent back a cheerful sticker to show that he really was fine. After thinking for a moment, he added another message. "I really am engaged. From now on, I won't have anything to do with Sarah." The typing indicator appeared on his friend's side, and after quite a while, he replied, "It's good you've moved on." Ethan curled his lips in a faint smile, exited the chat, and started scrolling through his WeChat moments. The newest post was from Sarah. "Let me introduce my new boyfriend. Love him the most." The picture was a selfie of her with Julian. The tone of the caption along with the emoji clearly wasn't Sarah's style. It was almost laughable. During their 3 years together, she had never once let Ethan touch her phone, much less post on her moments from it. But now, it had nothing to do with him anymore. He turned off his phone and before long drifted into sleep. In the middle of his deep slumber, a ringtone startled him awake. Squinting his eyes, he fumbled to answer the call, and the next moment, Sarah's voice came through. "Ethan, I drank too much. Come pick me up." Ethan instantly sobered, silently cursing his bad luck. He realized he should have blocked her. When he didn't speak, Sarah chuckled. "Still mad? Saw the post on WeChat moments." Her tone lifted at the end, carrying a hint of delight. "I lost a game, just messing around. I could delete it in 3 days." Ethan said coldly, "It's got nothing to do with me." But for some reason, that only seemed to amuse her more. "All right, don't be mad. Tomorrow morning I'll buy you those meat buns from the shop in the east of the city, the ones you love. Save some room, be good." That last word made Ethan's skin crawl. He hung up immediately, blocked her number, turned off his phone, and went back to sleep. Chapter for the next morning, Ethan arrived in the classroom. Julian was sitting at his desk, eating breakfast. When he saw Ethan, he curled his lips into a faint smile and said to Sarah, who was lying on the desk sleeping, "Sarah, thanks for going all the way to the east side of the city this morning to buy meat buns. I'm really happy." Sarah lifted her eyelids. "As long as you like." She didn't finish her sentence because the moment she saw Ethan, she stopped abruptly. Without looking at either of them, Ethan walked straight past and sat down in his seat to start reading. It wasn't until the break, when Ethan went to the restroom, that Sarah blocked him against the wall. "Ethan, this morning Julian said his stomach wasn't feeling well, so—" Ethan cut her off before she could finish, nodding slightly, and tried to walk past her. Sarah frowned and grabbed his wrist. "Ethan, don't be so petty. If it were you and a classmate wasn't feeling well, you'd have done the same thing I did." Ethan shook her off, a mocking smile tugging at his lips. This kind of thing had happened many times before in his past life. Julian always found all sorts of excuses to take away things Sarah had promised to give Ethan. Julian acted naive, gentle, and claimed he never fought over anything. Every time, he'd look at Ethan with red-rimmed eyes and apologize. "Ethan, I'm sorry. It's my fault." By comparison, Ethan was always framed as the unreasonable one, ill-tempered and constantly causing trouble. Sarah rubbed her temples. "All right, don't be mad. Tomorrow's the weekend. I'll take you to another city for some fun. We'll have a meal, watch a movie." Back then, whenever conflicts between them escalated, she would always do this. No apology, no real resolution, just a movie or a meal together, and the matter would be brushed aside as if nothing had happened. Ethan ignored her entirely and walked away. Chapter 5. The next morning, when Ethan woke up, the Montgomery family's car was already waiting downstairs. He was slightly surprised since they hadn't even tried to wake him up. He was about to say something when he received a text message from a new, unfamiliar number. It was Sarah. "Ethan, I've got something to do this weekend, so I can't go to the movies with you. Be good. Take care of yourself, and make sure you eat well. If I find out you're misbehaving, I'll spank you and bring your wife's number back." Her words made Ethan's stomach turn, and he nearly threw up. First thing in the morning, and she was already bringing bad luck. He decided that if he had the time, he really needed to change his SIM card to a brand new one. Chapter 6. 3 hours later, Ethan landed in City A. The moment he arrived, Mrs. Montgomery came to greet him warmly. She and Ethan's mother had been best friends since childhood. Later, one stayed in the capital while the other married into City A. Even though they lived far apart, their bond had never faded. Mrs. Montgomery warmly looped her arm through his, glancing around. "Where did that girl Valerie run off to?" The butler beside her replied. Miss was waiting for the young master earlier, but President Montgomery called her away for something. The way the butler addressed him as young master made Ethan feel a bit embarrassed. Mrs. Montgomery sighed. "That child is always busy, busy. Ethan, let Mom take you around first." Ethan glanced down at his phone. Valerie had just sent him a message. "Wait for me. I'll come find you in a bit." He replied, "All right." Mrs. Montgomery led him around the grand venue, introducing him to the high society guests attending the banquet. To everyone she met, she proudly declared, "This is my son-in-law, Ethan. Look at that handsome face. Mrs. Jenkins, isn't your daughter still single this year? Look here, this is my son-in-law. When we have the wedding, you'll be invited. Oh, Mrs. Wong." After a few rounds of this, Ethan was starting to feel overwhelmed. Thankfully, there were too many people attending today, and Mrs. Montgomery was called away to tend to other business. Before leaving, she had the butler stay with him. "Young master, the garden outside is planted with many of your favorite flowers. You can go take a look." Ethan opened his eyes a little wider in surprise. "My favorites?" The butler smiled and nodded. "Yes, Miss has been preparing them for a month now. We all know your preferences." It was impossible not to be surprised, and beyond that surprise, there was another warm feeling Ethan couldn't quite describe. He didn't know Valerie very well yet, but she had clearly gone completely out of her way to learn everything about him. "Thank you, Uncle Arthur. I'll go take a look." He went out to the garden, and, just as the butler had said, every single flower planted, there was a variety he liked. As he was admiring them, a familiar voice suddenly came from ahead. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" Ethan looked up to see Julian standing there in complete shock. Beside him was Sarah, the very one who had texted him claiming she had urgent business to attend to this weekend. Chapter 7. Sarah froze when she saw Ethan. She quickly walked toward him. "What are you doing here?" Behind her, Julian tugged at her sleeve and spoke to Ethan cautiously. "Ethan, I didn't expect you to secretly follow us here. Don't blame Sarah. She actually planned to bring you, but you know my family isn't well off, and I've never been to another city before. Sarah is kind-hearted, so she wanted to let me broaden my horizons. I'm sorry, don't be mad. If you have to blame someone, blame me." As he spoke, his eyes turned red, executing the exact same routine as his past life. Sarah grabbed Ethan's arm. "Since you secretly followed us, then stay behind me and don't run around. Today's occasion is very important." Her touch filled Ethan with a deep sense of disgust. However, since they were at the Montgomery residence with so many guests coming and going, he didn't want to cause a scene or argue with her. He forcefully shook her off. Sarah frowned. "Ethan, don't throw a tantrum." Ethan was deeply annoyed, stopping to turn and look at her. He was just about to speak when he saw the butler, Uncle Arthur, approaching from a distance with several large bodyguards. Ethan blinked. Uncle Arthur didn't hesitate. The bodyguards following behind him quickly and forcefully restrained Sarah and Julian. The butler commanded coldly, "Throw these two out." They moved so fast that by the time Ethan fully realized what had happened, Sarah and Julian were already gone. The butler gave Ethan a friendly smile. "Young master, if you ever need anything, just say the word. As long as we're here, we won't let anyone bully you. Miss is waiting for you." When Ethan turned around, he met a pair of beautiful eyes. Chapter 8. This was Ethan's first time meeting Valerie in person, and she was even more beautiful than she appeared on video. The black dress hugged her graceful figure, and her delicate face was absolutely stunning. Their engagement had been finalized after both of them agreed to it over the phone, making their elders incredibly happy. "Ethan," Valerie said, walking toward him. Ethan thought that their first face-to-face meeting might carry a little awkwardness, but she held his hand naturally, without the slightest trace of unfamiliarity. Her voice was just as gentle as it had been over the video call. "Are you hungry? Let me take you to get something to eat." After sitting on a plane for hours, Ethan really was hungry. Valerie led him into the Montgomery family's private dining room, where every single dish laid out on the table was something he loved. He was a little surprised. She sat down beside him and even put on gloves to patiently peel shrimp for him, which made him feel quite embarrassed but deeply cared for. Afterward, Ethan followed Valerie to greet the Montgomery family elders. By the time the grand banquet was over, the gifts given to him filled 5 entire suitcases. Valerie accompanied him back to the Capitol, and as they were parting ways, Ethan hesitated before asking, "Valerie, where did you find out about all my preferences? From flowers to food, even to gifts." Hearing this, Valerie smiled, but there was a deep seriousness in her eyes. "I've always known, but I still don't know everything you like." She curved her lips. "There's plenty of time. You'll find out slowly." At that, Ethan nodded. It was already late, and Valerie had urgent business to attend to, so she had to rush back overnight. After saying goodbye, Ethan went upstairs to his apartment. At the door, he saw Sarah waiting. Chapter 9. Ethan didn't know how long she had been waiting, but when she saw him, her face was full of anger. "Ethan, where did you go?" Ethan's expression turned ice cold. "What does it have to do with you?" She let out a disbelieving laugh. "What does it have to do with me? Do you remember that I'm your girlfriend?" Ethan's tone was laced with heavy mockery. "Are you? My friend's public announcement didn't feature me, and I broke up with you a month ago." Sarah's expression faltered for a moment, but the next second she stepped forward and grabbed his wrist tightly. "Come with me now and apologize to Julian." Ethan was completely baffled. When he didn't move, her anger deepened. "I didn't expect you to have relatives working at the Montgomery family, but fine. Let's say you secretly followed me to City A. But you had your relative, yesterday's Uncle Arthur, throw me and Julian out in front of everyone. Do you know how much that hurt Julian's pride? He's sensitive, fragile, and proud. He was so upset he's talking about dropping out of school. When did you become so cruel?" Her words made Ethan let out a short, cold laugh. He knew she had totally misunderstood his relationship with the butler. In his previous life, Ethan had thought Julian didn't know about his relationship with Sarah and that Julian was just another person she was deceiving. It wasn't until he received Julian's mocking text right before he died that he realized Julian had known all along. "Not my problem," Ethan said. He didn't want to waste another word with Sarah, so he opened his door and went inside. Sarah stared at the closed door for a long moment before giving a derisive, angry laugh and stepping back. Her voice was sharp and calm as she called out, "Ethan, well done." With that, she turned and left. Chapter 10. The next morning when Ethan arrived at the classroom, he noticed his classmates looking at him with a kind of heavy, sympathetic gaze. He didn't understand why at first, but then he saw that everyone's desks had wedding candies laid out on them. His desk had them too, actually even more than the others. His friend Marcus came over, his tone a bit complicated. "These are Sarah and Julian's wedding candies." Ethan nodded calmly, indicating that he understood. Marcus glanced at him, opened his mouth to say something, but in the end kept quiet. It was only a few days later that Marcus came rushing over to him, phone in hand, looking absolutely furious as he showed him a WeChat Moments post. "I heard Sarah and Julian took a 2-week leave. Sarah took Julian abroad for a vacation." The photo was of Sarah and Julian together. Julian had his arm wrapped tightly around Sarah's waist, grinning happily, while Sarah's hand rested on top of his head. Marcus, highly indignant on Ethan's behalf, said, "You chased Sarah for 3 years without success, and Julian transfers here for 2 months, and then." Ethan kept his eyes fixed on the book in front of him without looking up. "I've said it many times. It has nothing to do with me anymore." Marcus sighed heavily at that. Forget it. I guess you two just aren't fated to be. Then he patted Ethan's shoulder. How about a get-together after school tonight? I booked a private room at Nightlight Club. William didn't refuse and just nodded. Chapter 11. Marcus skipped the last class and went to the club early. Ethan waited until school ended before heading over. When he arrived and opened the door, there were already several people sitting in the private room. In the innermost seat sat Sarah and Julian. Marcus got to Ethan first, grabbing his arm and pulling him inside with a loud shout. "Sarah, look who's here." Ethan's face darkened instantly. Sarah leaned back on the sofa, let out a mocking laugh, and looked at him with a half-smile. Ethan turned to look at Marcus. Marcus's expression was evasive, but he still urged, "Ethan, sit next to Sarah. There's an open seat right there." Ethan didn't say anything. He just looked at Marcus quietly. Marcus and Ethan had known each other since their first day at school. They often attended classes together, ate together, and even traveled during breaks. Ethan had truly treated him like a brother, but now he realized Marcus was playing him. Sarah stood up from the sofa, naturally looping her arm through Julian's as she lifted her chin toward him. "Let's go. Didn't you say you wanted dessert from C's tonight? I'll take you there now." Julian's cheeks turned red, and he nodded happily. As they walked past Ethan, Julian glanced back and gave him a thoroughly smug, victorious smile. Marcus saw it too, and once they were gone, he acted furious. "Ethan, did you see that? How arrogant he is." Ethan didn't respond, only looking at Marcus calmly. Marcus pressed his lips together, trying to defend himself. "Ethan, I really can't stand Julian. Of course, mostly I just feel bad for you. How can he swoop in and take your place like that?" Ethan looked at him and said flatly, "Don't have any more contact with me from now on." Chapter 12. When Ethan walked out of the club, Sarah was standing alone by the entrance, leaning against the doorframe with her bag in hand. Seeing him, she crossed her arms over her chest, blocking his path with a confident smile playing on her lips. "This time you held out quite a while, broke your own record. But what's this? Getting thinner skinned now? You don't come looking for me yourself, so you use your friend instead?" Over the past 3 years, Sarah and Ethan had had many Cold Wars. But every time, she was the one giving him the silent treatment, and Ethan could never hold out more than a few days before lowering his head, bringing gifts, and asking for peace. Sarah smiled, reaching out her hand as if to hook her arm through hers. "All right, I'm guessing you've spent this past half-month reflecting and realized you were in the wrong." Ethan was about to sidestep her, but her hand suddenly froze in midair first because Julian had appeared not far away carrying the desserts. Julian didn't say a word. He just stood there quietly, the corners of his eyes tinged red, looking pathetic. Sarah glanced at Ethan, then at Julian, and finally lowered her hand. "Ethan, go back first. I'll come find you tonight." With that, she turned and walked right back toward Julian. Chapter 13. Julian handed the desserts to Sarah, his voice slightly choked. "Sarah, do you want to eat this?" Normally, Sarah would have smiled and told Julian to feed her. But thinking of having just seen Ethan, Sarah felt a strange sense of unease and said, "Not right now, Julian. I'm going to delete the post on WeChat Moments." Since Ethan had seemingly taken the initiative to back down by showing up at the club, Sarah felt she ought to give him some response. After all, Ethan was the boyfriend she had been with for 3 years. Julian's voice trembled with hidden anger and jealousy, but he still forced a soft, "All right." Then he added, "Sarah, it's getting late. I'm worried it's not safe for you to go home alone. Can you walk me back?" Sarah did not refuse. Chapter 14. After washing up and getting into bed that night, Ethan received a text message from another unfamiliar number. It was an image. When he opened it, it was a photo of Sarah and Julian lying together in bed, sleeping in each other's arms. A text followed. "Ethan, Sarah is mine. You can't take her from me." There was no need to guess who had sent it. Ethan smiled faintly, feeling nothing but relief, and replied, "Trash in the trash can, quite a match." Apparently dissatisfied with this reaction, Julian immediately sent another photo of him and Sarah in a different intimate pose, texting back, still talking tough. "Just don't cry into your pillow at night." Ethan rolled his eyes. Idiot. The next morning, Ethan went to class. Not long after he sat down, Sarah unexpectedly took the seat right beside him. She set down a bag. Your favorite buns. When Ethan looked at her, she lifted her chin slightly. What are you staring at me for? Touched? Eat them before they get cold. Sarah always managed to say things that made Ethan's skin crawl. They had once been desk mates, but ever since Julian arrived, she had moved to sit beside Julian under the pretense of helping the new student. Now she was suddenly back. Ethan had no idea what she was trying to pull, but since the teacher had already arrived, he didn't want to argue and disrupt the class, so he held his temper. Immediately after class ended, Ethan went straight to the teacher's office to request an official seat change. After school, Sarah blocked him at the school gate, frowning heavily. Ethan, what are you doing? Why did you change seats? Ethan looked at her calmly. Because I wanted to. No reason. Sarah stared at his face, then let out a confident laugh. All right, don't sulk anymore. I was going to come see you last night, but it got late, and I didn't want to wake you if you were asleep. She then pulled out her phone and handed it to him proudly, speaking as if expecting praise. Look, I deleted everything from WeChat moments. From now on, if you want to check my phone, you can check it anytime, okay? Huh? She suddenly leaned closer, lowering her voice with a teasing lilt. Ethan couldn't hold back the intense wave of nausea, took a sharp step back, and vomited right there on the ground in front of her. Sarah's expression darkened instantly. Ethan, before she could explode, Ethan's phone rang. It was Valerie. Ethan, I'm outside your school. Ethan's eyes lit up immediately, and he glanced around. A low-profile, yet luxurious Maybach was parked not far away. He quickly walked right past Sarah, got in, and the car started, pulling away from the school gates. Sitting in the passenger seat, Ethan hesitated for a moment before saying to Valerie, "She's my ex-girlfriend, but we've already broken up completely." After he said it, a faint unease stirred inside him, worried she might misunderstand. Valerie smiled, not showing the slightest surprise or anger. I know. I don't mind." She paused for a moment before adding softly, "Ethan, I don't mind not because I have no feelings for you, but because I care about you very much. You're the partner I've chosen, and I can accept everything about your past." Seeing the sheer sincerity and depth in her eyes, it was impossible for Ethan not to be deeply moved. His eyes turned slightly red, and he sniffed, turning to look out the window to hide his emotion. Valerie didn't say anything else. She simply reached over and held his hand tightly. Chapter 15 this time, Valerie had come to the capital with Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery. They would be staying for a few days to hold a supplementary engagement ceremony for Ethan and Valerie. The two families had agreed that the engagement ceremony would be held in the capital and the formal wedding would take place in city. Valerie was now picking Ethan up to go to the high-end restaurant where their elders were already waiting. When they arrived and got out of the car, Ethan glanced at his phone and saw dozens of messages and missed calls. His brows furrowed tightly. This was his brand new number, and all of them were from Sarah. "Ethan, whose car did you get into?" "Ethan, answer the phone." "Don't make me angry, Ethan." Just then, Sarah called again. Ethan hit decline, blocked the number immediately, and set his phone to automatically silence all calls from unfamiliar numbers. Valerie waited patiently by his side the entire time. When he finished, she took his hand gently. "Let's go." Chapter 16. Ethan wasn't fond of noisy gatherings, but for the engagement, the elders from both families sat together in a warm, joyous atmosphere. After the meal, Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery returned to their hotel first, leaving Valerie in the capital to spend a few days alone with Ethan. While they were talking, Ethan suddenly received several WeChat messages from his classmates and old friends. "Ethan, didn't expect you to be hiding something this big. You've been with Sarah all along. Wow. I thought you were just a simp chasing her all this time. But turns out you already conquered her ages ago. Ethan, what's going on? Tell me everything. I'm dying of curiosity." Ethan frowned deeply and opened a screenshot one of them sent. In it, Sarah had made a massive public WeChat Moments announcement. "Let me introduce my boyfriend of 3 years, Ethan." In that instant, a surge of pure anger went through Ethan. He turned to Valerie. "Can we take a picture together?" Without a single word of question, Valerie beautifully put her arm around his shoulders, took his phone, and snapped a gorgeous photo of them together. Ethan immediately posted the picture on his own WeChat Moments. The next second, his moments completely exploded. Friends flooded the comments section with frantic questions, asking what was going on. In the comment section underneath his post, Ethan directly attached a screenshot of the exact breakup text he had sent Sarah a month ago. Chapter 17, when Valerie and Ethan returned to his apartment, they ran into Sarah standing right at the door. Her eyes were bloodshot, her fists were clenched tight, and she stared at Ethan in absolute disbelief. "Ethan, how could you do this to me? It's all fake, right? I know you're mad at me for standing you up a few times before. I won't do it again, okay? Ethan, don't find another woman just to spite me." She hurried over frantically, reaching out to grab him, but Valerie stepped in smoothly to block her path. Sarah was tall, but she was still half a head shorter than Valerie. Fury flashed across Sarah's face as she raised her hands and tried to forcefully push Valerie out of the way. But Ethan got there first. Stepping forward, he slapped Sarah hard across the face. Smack! The air went dead silent. "Sarah, can you stop disgusting me already?" Ethan shouted, his voice full of pure revulsion. "Find another woman just to provoke you? How big is your ego? Don't you feel the slightest bit ashamed? You may not feel ashamed, but I feel sick. I told you long ago that we broke up, that we have nothing to do with each other anymore. I'm already engaged. Don't come bothering me ever again." The whole scene struck Ethan as profoundly laughable. In his previous life, he had refused to let go, dragging things out and marrying Sarah. After the wedding, she treated him with cold, bitter indifference at every turn, and even in his final moments, she was off traveling with Julian. Now, when he wanted absolutely nothing to do with her, she clung to him relentlessly. Was she really that shameless? Sarah stood frozen in place, clutching her cheek, saying nothing. Her feet didn't move as she watched Valerie and Ethan walk inside and shut the door. In that exact moment, she finally realized Ethan wasn't joking and he wasn't throwing a tantrum. Something precious had been lost forever. Chapter 18, the next few days happened to be a holiday, and Valerie and Ethan spent them traveling together, growing much closer. When they came back, Ethan heard some shocking news from a close classmate. "Sarah and Julian are engaged," the friend said. Ethan nodded. "That's good." In his previous life, Sarah had always wanted to be with Julian, but because Ethan had been in the way, they could never openly be together. This time around, they had gotten exactly what they wanted. "You don't know, they made a total fool of themselves," his friend added, leaning in. A massive scene. Ethan raised an eyebrow, prompting him to continue. "You know how fast gossip spreads on campus. Someone dug up that during the time you were officially with Sarah, she went out with Julian multiple times and did all sorts of highly ambiguous things. To clear her name and protect Julian, Sarah came out publicly to clarify that they were just friends and that all the earlier photos and rumors were just because she lost a party game." The friend curled his lip in deep disgust. TSK. What kind of friends hug, cuddle, and go on romantic overseas trips together? Just the two of them. Oh wait, there is a kind, boyfriend and girlfriend. Ethan chuckled quietly. Sarah really is a piece of work. But Julian is something else too, the friend countered. On the surface, he backed up Sarah's words publicly, claiming they were just friends. But then he turned right around and took those private bed photos straight to the Jenkins family. Ethan remembered how Julian had proudly sent him those pictures of them sleeping together in bed, and how Sarah had been able to act like absolutely nothing had happened the very next day, demanding to reconcile with him. It made him feel even more disgusted by her. His friend nodded. Naturally, the Jenkins family couldn't let such an embarrassing scandal get out to high society, so they immediately stepped in and forced Sarah and Julian to get engaged on the spot to save face. The friend sighed with massive relief. Good thing you were smart enough to break up with her. Even back when you liked her so much, I wanted to tell you, Sarah never looked like the kind of person who takes relationships seriously. She's not the marrying type. Smart? Ethan thought to himself. It was a lesson he had paid for with an entire lifetime, because he had already died once. Chapter 19, in the days that followed, Ethan was incredibly busy with his upcoming university graduation and preparing for his postgraduate entrance examinations. But every single weekend, without fail, Valerie would travel down to see him. It just so happened that one of those days was his birthday, a fact that Ethan, buried in exam prep, had completely forgotten himself. Yet, Valerie appeared right in front of his door, holding a beautiful birthday cake and a fresh bouquet of flowers. Ethan was stunned because he was certain he had never told her his birth date. "How do you know so much about me?" Valerie chuckled softly, her eyes sparkling. "Maybe it's because we're connected by fate." "Is that so?" Ethan remained highly skeptical. Later, in private, he went to Mrs. Montgomery to learn more about Valerie's past. Mrs. Montgomery laughed and told him that he had actually met Valerie when he was very little. Ethan was shocked. "When? How'd I not know?" "Before you turned 5, I brought Valerie to your house to stay," Mrs. Montgomery explained warmly. "Back then, you kept trailing behind her, saying she was so pretty and loudly proclaiming that you'd marry her when you grew up." Ethan's face flushed a deep red. He truly didn't remember this at all. Mrs. Montgomery then explained that when he was 5, he had fallen into a freezing river, developed an incredibly high fever, and after waking up, he had suffered amnesia, completely forgetting everything that had happened to him before the age of 5. Chapter 20. The next time Ethan heard any news about Sarah and Julian was a few months later, and the news honestly shocked him to his core. Sarah had gone to prison. Right after graduation, the Jenkins family had aggressively forced Sarah and Julian to marry, to completely bury the scandal. But after the wedding, the marriage was a disaster. Sarah often fought violently with Julian. Every time they argued, she wouldn't come home at night, instead going to wild bars, drinking heavily and messing around with other men to spite him. Over time, Julian couldn't stand the humiliation anymore. Holding their newborn child in his arms, he tracked her down to a loud bar to confront her and force her to come home. Sarah felt incredibly embarrassed and enraged to be publicly confronted like that in front of her friends. During the frantic physical struggle that ensued, she forcefully pushed Julian away. It was pure bad luck. Julian stumbled backward, tripped, and his head hit the sharp corner of a heavy table. He hit a major nerve, killing him instantly. Julian's family had lost their only son, so of course, they weren't going to let it slide. They stormed the Jenkins family, screaming and demanding a massive financial settlement to drop the charges. But the Jenkins family has many children, and Sarah and Julian's endless scandals had already brought immense shame to their name. Why would they spend millions of dollars to protect a disgraced daughter who committed manslaughter? They simply washed their hands of her and handed Sarah straight over to the police. Hearing this, Ethan couldn't help but feel a brief sigh of pity for how twisted their lives became, but he had already experienced the chilling coldness of the Jenkins family firsthand. In his previous life, when he had gotten into that fatal car accident while running around desperately for Sarah's career, he had been wheeled into the operating room. Unable to reach Sarah, he had called her family's residence in a panic. All they had coldly told him was for him to handle it himself. "All right, enough of that talk. Your girlfriend's here to see you," his friend said, giving Ethan a sharp wink. Ethan looked up and saw Valerie standing not far away, wearing a bright smile and looking at him lovingly. He stood up, walked over, and naturally took her hand in his. "It's not the weekend. What brings you here?" Leaning comfortably on his arm, Valerie tilted her beautiful face up toward him. "I came because I missed you." Ethan smiled warmly, his heart full. "That answer I like." Chapter 21. Valerie's extra story. Valerie first met Ethan when he was 5 and she was 8 years old. According to her mother, Ethan was the little husband her mother had playfully found for her, and the two of them would get married in the future. Valerie was immediately unhappy about it. How could she marry someone she had never even met? She didn't want to go, but being young, she couldn't fight against the adults and was dragged along to Ethan's house. When they first met, Ethan was crying miserably for some reason, with snot and tears all over his face. Valerie found him utterly disgusting, but the moment Ethan saw her, he stopped crying instantly. Before she could even react, the little boy ran over, threw his arms around her legs, and called out in a clear, sweet voice, "Pretty sister." Then, he wiped his snot right on her dress. Wonderful, Valerie thought. In that moment, she had only one thought: throw him out. But Ethan's mother beat her to it, scooping him up while Valerie's mother stood off to the side, smiling so hard her eyes disappeared. Valerie was in a foul mood that day, and the idea of marrying him made it even worse. She wanted to leave that very day, but her mother insisted on staying at Ethan's house for a while. From that day on, Valerie had a little shadow following her everywhere. Before dawn every morning, he would climb in her bed, shaking her and calling for her to get up and play. When night fell, he would climb in her bed again, asking to sleep beside her. It drove her crazy, but she had to admit he was kind of good-looking. There were a few times she wanted to secretly make him cry, so he'd stop clinging to her. But whenever she looked into those big, watery eyes, she could never bring herself to do it. Forget it, she thought, no point holding grudges against a little kid. The day Valerie was supposed to leave, Ethan held her hand tightly and secretly led her out of the house to a nearby riverbank. He said he had seen lots of little fish in the water and wanted to catch some for her as a special parting gift. Valerie thought it wasn't safe and planned to drag him back home, but the boy moved too fast, slipped, and accidentally fell deep into the rushing water. Valerie panicked and, without thinking, jumped into the freezing river after him. She used all her might to push him safely to the shore, but she was still just a child herself. After getting him out, she was too exhausted to climb up and was violently swept away by the strong current. When she woke up again, she was in a hospital bed. Her mother was crying hysterically beside her, and her dad angrily asked why she had gone to the dangerous river. Valerie thought for a moment, and to protect Ethan from getting in trouble, she lied and said it was entirely her own idea to catch fish and that she had forced Ethan to go there. That day, her father whipped her dozens of times with a heavy leather belt, beating her so badly she couldn't get out of bed for nearly a month. From then on, Valerie held a deep grudge against Ethan in her heart. She swore that if she ever married him, she'd make absolutely sure to bully him back twice as hard. But as they grew older, Ethan forgot her entirely due to his amnesia. When she crossed paths with him years later, it felt like her whole world had collapsed. She found out he was already deeply, obsessively in love with another girl named Sarah. Valerie could only bury her feelings deep inside her heart, moving on with her life. Until one day, when she was in the capital on business and went to visit a sick friend at the hospital. Suddenly, the emergency doors burst open. She saw a young man covered in blood being rushed frantically into surgery. With just one single glance, she recognized him. It was Ethan. He had been in a horrific car accident and was bleeding out heavily. At that exact same moment, his wife Sarah was completely unreachable, blissfully traveling abroad on a luxury vacation with her lover, Julian. In that moment, Valerie's eyes turned blood red with rage, and she had only one single thought: destroy Sarah. And later on, using her family's immense power, she did exactly that. She held that rage until she suddenly opened her eyes one day and found that she had been reborn into the past, with all her memories completely intact. She had been reborn to a time when Ethan hadn't yet married Sarah, a time when everything could still be changed. This time, she didn't hesitate. She immediately went to her parents and asked them to initiate the arranged marriage with Ethan's family. But remembering the past, she refused to just sit around and do nothing like she had before. She was fully prepared to take the initiative and fiercely fight to steal him away from Sarah. But just as she was about to take the first aggressive initiative, the answer came back from Ethan's family. Ethan had instantly and gladly agreed to the engagement. Valerie smiled to herself. She knew right then and there that she wasn't the only one who had been reborn. Chapter 22. The Perfect Beginning. 3 years after graduation, the capital was alive with the vibrant colors of early autumn. For Ethan, this day marked the official culmination of a journey that had spanned 2 lifetimes. Standing in front of the full-length mirror in the dressing room, he adjusted his tailored black tuxedo, a faint, peaceful smile playing on his lips. There were no ghosts from the past haunting him anymore. Sarah and Julian had long since faded into distant, cautionary tales of a life he had successfully escaped. Today, His mind was filled only with the promise of the future. The dressing room door clicked open, and Marcus stepped in. Over the past few years, Marcus had worked tirelessly to mend his friendship with Ethan, genuinely repenting for his past naivety. "Ethan, it's time," Marcus said softly, his eyes filled with sincere happiness for his friend. "Everyone is waiting." Ethan took a deep breath, nodded, and walked out toward the grand ballroom of City A's most prestigious venue. When the double doors opened, the sheer warmth of the room enveloped him. His parents and the Montgomery elders sat in the front rows, their faces beaming with pride and joy. But the moment the music shifted, Ethan's entire world narrowed down to the single figure walking down the aisle. Valerie looked breathtakingly beautiful in her flowing white wedding gown. The aloof, untouchable so the business world feared was entirely gone. Instead, her eyes were bright, shimmering with unshed tears of absolute happiness as she looked at him. She walked with grace, each step cementing a vow they had both silently carried across time. When her father placed Valerie's hand in Ethan's, Ethan squeezed it gently. Her hand was warm, grounding, and completely real. "You look beautiful," Ethan whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Valerie smiled, her eyes crinkling. "You don't look too bad yourself, Mr. Montgomery-to-be." As the priest spoke the words of commitment, Ethan looked at the woman beside him. In his past life, he had chased an illusion and met a tragic end. But in this life, he had been found by someone who had loved him since childhood, someone who had fought through time just to protect him. "I do," Ethan said, his voice ringing clear and steady through the hall. "I do," Valerie echoed, her gaze unwavering. When they exchanged rings, the applause erupted around them, loud and celebratory. Ethan leaned in, catching Valerie by the waist, and kissed her, a deep, tender kiss that carried the weight of gratitude, healing, and an eternity of unspoken promises. As they turned to face their cheering friends and family, hand in hand, Ethan looked out at the bright, sunlit afternoon. He was finally safe. He was finally loved. His second chance at life had turned into the most beautiful reality, and as he looked at Valerie's radiant smile, he knew their happy ending was just the beginning.